Really want to say thank you to everybody for showing up. I know we shifted the dates on everybody over the holiday season and moved to Tuesday evenings from Wednesdays. So appreciate you guys making it and continuing to support the cause, the call, and each other. First up tonight will be David Alter from Planning Alliance Financial Services, and he's going to have a chance to talk to us all about financial planning, the different aspects that go into it, the different things and services that they offer. So, welcome, David.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, everyone. I'm Esther Fnaya. I'm with Planning Alliance. Thank you for having us here tonight. I want to introduce to you my colleague, David Alter. David is also our CEO. David is an expert on complex practice management, business continuity, and estate planning matters. He has been in the financial service and insurance industry since 1981. He
Thank you.
pioneered the development and proprietary estate and business planning techniques, as well as cutting-edge insurance products, and he is a specialist in financial modeling for business and insurance situations. David received his Bachelor's of Science from Boston University, and he received a Chartered Life Underwriter designation through the American College of Financial Service. David, do you want to take me over?
Sure. Thank you, Esther. So anyway, Corey, just to tell you, I wanted to try to make this something interesting that maybe people could use. So I wanted to talk about some aspects of business continuity planning, and a number of the concepts would be relevant to the kind of deal making that I think you're covering. So that's the subject I want to cover. And just by way of a little extra background, I'm doing this now 45 years, as Esther mentioned, and I have worked with hundreds of companies on business agreements, buy-sell agreements, executive retention, sale to other companies, intra-family transfers, etc. So I tried to, was told I have about 20 minutes. I'm going to try to make it interesting to people who are a knowledgeable audience as opposed to, speaking to teaching people about basic financial awareness or something. Okay, so more, all right, going in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to talk quickly until somebody slows me down. So if this takes 5 minutes to make the presentation or it takes longer, that's up to everybody here. I'm going to share my screen because we have an outline.
Great.
And thank you, Esther, for helping me with this. Oh, you have to allow me to share my screen.
Yep, I'm looking for it right now. Well, I'm looking for where the request came in. 1 second. There, you should have it now.
Okay, let's.
Able to do it?
Here we go. Good.
Okay, great.
All right. Everybody see our outline, a brief introduction to business continuity planning? We're good? Okay.
Yep, we got it.
All right. So I'm going to speak in terms of business agreements and, things that can make your business ownership worth more or less. So uh, let's start with liquidity. Closely held businesses, real estate in particular, but most closely held businesses are considered illiquid. But there's things that you can do to make your interest more liquid, right? Examples would be the right to put your ownership back to the owners, back to the other owners, or back to the business, right? When we are helping people reach agreements, we usually try to build in some form of liquidity. It could be the right to transfer. It can be Or the question that I've asked any number of businesses is, would it make your ownership interest worth more if, subject to the reasonable protections for the business and your colleagues, you had the right to sell it back to the business at a pre-agreed upon date and at a pre-agreed upon valuation method? I believe the answer has been almost unanimous yes. When I don't hear that, I hear I want that. Because very often businesses just sign an agreement that's non-transferable and they find themselves in a trap, and then getting out of it becomes more difficult. And we can get into, if you want to, at any point in this conversation or later, what protections we build in for the business as well as the shareholders in doing those put call arrangements. The a second aspect clearly is control. If you have a controlling interest that's worth more than a non-controlling interest. But what happens if you don't have a controlling interest? What happens if you're a minority owner? So what we suggest building into your agreement to make your minority interest worth more is what we call a minority shareholder, using the term shareholder generically, minority shareholder bill of rights. What money has to be distributed for taxes? What can the people who have control of the business do? Um, and what are your rights if certain things are done? So we call it a minority shareholder bill of rights. And um, it often makes, and I'll get into why agreements don't get signed, but often building in things like minority rights make it more likely to get everyone's signature on a document. Proper risk management. And I'm going to talk in a little bit and show you the mathematics behind this, but proper risk management makes a business worth more. Risk, it's been taught to me that is a function of the magnitude of the risk time the probability of it occurring. But that also would not say that somebody might find it palatable because if my risk of death is only 1%, that might not be acceptable to me, even though the probability is low. Multiple risks increase total risk. So things that can be done to manage risk make a business worth more. Opportunity, what is the opportunity? The reason we're investing in this business? Well, I was taught in business school, and I believe it's taught in every business school still today and in economics, is expected return. And that's your anticipated return times the probability of earning it. Now, I'm going to tell you that we do not agree with that formula that's taught in every business school, and I'm going to show you why. So I have a little bit of a presentation here. If you'll give me one moment, I'm going to start a slideshow. Um, this is something we put together. We actually put this together 20 years ago. So I just want to jump in here. So we're all taught that if we might receive $100,000 in the future, and there's a 10% chance that we're going to receive it. Everybody, certainly in this group, knows that the value of that is $10,000. That's the expected return. I'm ignoring the time value of money for the most part in this. Another way of looking at this is if there's 10 doors and there's $100,000 behind one of them, what is the opportunity to pick that door? Hello?
Didn't she go today?
We got that.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So if there's 10 doors and there's $100,000 behind one of these doors and zero behind the 9 doors, on average, what's the opportunity worth to open a door? And on average, that's worth $10,000. This is what we're taught in business school. I was taught it. I've spoken to recent graduates from different programs, lecturing economists. They're all taught the same thing. And it's our position that that is a flawed formula. And I'm going to show you why. Because it assumes you know what might happen in the future, and you do not. To quote a couple of people, my father used to say that you can't predict 6 months in advance in business, let alone 2 years. And I think Yogi Berra said, if I'm quoting other people, quoting Yogi Berra, but it said predictions are difficult, especially about the future, right? So the concept of expected return assumes you know what might happen, and you don't. because there's any number of outcomes that can occur in the future. I've shown here that it's just outcomes, one, two, three, all the way up through the nth outcome. And each associated or each possible outcome has its own associated future return. Everybody follows me so far? Flag me if you don't, right? Each possible outcome has its own associated probability, whether we know it or not. It has a probability, some probability with any outcome that you can think of affecting a decision that you're making or a business opportunity. And therefore, each outcome has its own associated expected return. If your plan or your business agreement or your business plan worked under the range of foreseeable circumstances, what is that plan worth? Any takers on this Zoom call? Right? I'll answer the question. It's worth the sum of the expected returns. And if you think of why that would be, it's because the probability of it actually working, if it anticipated all outcomes, the probability of it working would be 100%. Now, technically, it's the present value of the sum of expected returns. I just keep that out to simplify things. And what we just proved mathematically is that a plan that works most of the time is better than a plan that works part of the time. Right? And I find in the world of business agreements, particularly planning for closely held companies, but not just closely held companies, that very often they are focused on a narrow range of things. They do not cover the broad range of things that might occur or changes in the circumstances of the owners. I'm going to go over some common mistakes that we see, but just let's assume that's the case. Now, if we had a two-member company, what are the various contingencies that can occur? This is just some examples of ones that may be ignored when people are planning. This is just one example, and we've actually made this more formal. We've built software where we can plug in all the different variables that we want under different logical considerations. But for the moment, if I have a two-owner company, well, does my plan work, my business agreement work, if one of the members wants to retire early or even just retire normally, or if there's a death, a common disaster? And just to give you an example, we were brought in to advise a successful real estate syndication firm. It was an interesting situation. These guys at the time had been doing this a couple of decades, and they had, I'm going to say, 50 regular investors who went from them to deal. They were a success story at a time when many real estate syndications were not successful. And we were brought in because there were the two founders. One had a son in the business, one didn't have a son in the business. One wanted the son to take over, the other didn't want the son to take over. So the accountant asked if we could help. They were the accountant's largest client. And what we found there was that they had all these limited partnership agreements for all their different syndications where they were the general partners, but the general partnerships were personal to them. They were personal to them. All the agreements said it, every one of their syndications. And if there was a common disaster or something happened to both of them, there was no general partner for all these limited partnerships. Then this is a company that was building over decades. I'm just using this as an example of where things weren't covered. If you want to know the outcome, how we fixed that, we brought in the law firm and we got all the investors in all the different deals, and they weren't exactly the same investors in every different deal, how to approve rewriting all their limited partnership agreements to provide for succession on a general partnership. I'm just using that as an example. Okay. I'm going to jump out of this for the moment here and come back here. So anyway, what we've proven is that a business agreement, a business plan, or really generally any action if it works under the broadest range of circumstances, it is generally more valuable than one that does not. I also gave this lecture to a group of people in our industry a number of years ago, and there was a tall man with silver hair sitting in the front, and he stood up and he introduced himself to me, and he said, "David, I was a captain on a nuclear submarine." He said, "I know I'm tall." And he said, but the model that I just showed you was very similar to the model that they use to analyze risk on the nuclear power plant. So that was just some feedback. Now, I want to talk about fact finding in a business situation, right? Why to get to a proper, help people reach an agreement, fact finding is so important. And I want to talk about what's obvious and what's not obvious. What's obvious is that to give somebody advice about their business, we need to know the facts. Otherwise, it's like a doctor. If you don't examine someone and know what's going on, you can't tell them what to do. But there's something not so obvious in reaching agreements between parties. And that is there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So you have partners, your partners may have their own attorneys. You may only use one attorney. There's a CPA. You may have an insurance consultant, financial advisors. People have spouses. They have executives in the company. There's a lot of parties that can get involved with all of this stuff. If those parties do not agree on what the facts are, they will never agree on anything else. So we use fact finding to get everybody onto the same playing field, and it enhances the likelihood of actually reaching an agreement if everyone's looking at the same facts, including us. Um, we've also found, if you talk to the big law firms that do a lot of corporate work and estate planning and things like that, as many as 40% of the agreements they draft end up unexecuted. Anybody ever seen agreements get drafted and not signed? Anybody? Right? And the question is why? And there's a number of reasons why, but I do want to bring up just for this meeting here that when you're finding out people's objectives, what they want to accomplish, oftentimes they don't tell the truth. Did you ever have that? You're talking to somebody and you think there's some hidden agenda there, you're not quite sure what it is? It's common. And why don't people tell the truth? And particularly people who know each other well, they're business partners. Why don't they tell each other the truth? And they don't, primarily because the truth might create some kind of problem, right? I don't want your kids in this business. That would be an example. What do you mean? I don't want your wife or your husband anywhere near this agreement. I don't think you can be trusted with money, right? I'm concerned about you key executive, that what happens if you start dogging it on the job and things like that. There's things that can come up that are cause people discomfort, and as a result, they don't voice their concerns. So we have a couple of rules that we would like to people to follow if they're going to work with us, and I'll put them right here. Number one, how someone feels is not negotiable because you can't change how somebody feels. So are we going to have a discussion about it? What we want to know is how they feel. We want to hear the truth, but we don't want to have a discussion about it. So no party to our negotiation that we're engaging in can express a judgment on how another party feels. It's breaking our rules if we want to reach an agreement. And each party must validate each other's right to feel the way they do. These are our rules. And I feel our track record in working with parties to reach agreements, and we can discuss where we generally work and don't work, probably gets close to 90% or better. All right. But we do it out of experience, from just what we've learned over time. And as I mentioned, poor fact finding leads to a set of documents and some party won't sign them because they've got some hesitation and they just don't feel it's in their interest. Now, what I would like to cover next, if no one's got any questions so far, I want to cover some examples of what mistakes that we see in planning. and I can probably give you examples of all of them that I've seen. One of them is taking rights of owners to sell or transfer their interests off the table. I mentioned that if your interest is liquid, it's worth more. I think the general valuation, if you use an appraisal company, it's worth a liquid asset is worth about 50% more than an illiquid one.
Thank you for watching part 1 with David from Planning Alliance. Check back soon for part 2 and 3. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.